Hi, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Grab Your Popcorn. Thank you to anyone out there in space and time who is listening to this. I really do appreciate it. My goal is to upload these episodes every Thursday at 1 p.m. We'll see how that goes, but that is my goal. Just a warning, there are spoilers ahead. I believe once the movie's out, it's fair game. So today's episode, we're going to be focusing on Wicked that was released at the end of November of 2024. I've been waiting to see this movie for quite some time. I initially became a fan of Wicked through the soundtrack from the original Broadway cast back in 2003, and I had the opportunity to see the touring Broadway show in Seattle in 2008 and fell in love with the story. I loved the way that it wove itself into my favorite childhood movie, The Wizard of Oz. It was Victor Fleming's 1939 Technicolor Dreamland that first swept me into the world of Oz. I will be doing a future episode on The Wizard of Oz, so we'll not be deep diving into it overly in this review. However, I will mention the Easter eggs that are left for Oz fans throughout the film. Wicked is the origin story of the Wicked Witch of the West, the central antagonist in The Wizard of Oz. The major theme or question that this film is asking is, what does it mean to be wicked, and what is the root cause of it? We learn primarily through the characters of Elphaba, the Wicked Witch of the West, played by Cynthia Erivo, and Glinda, the Good, played by Ariana Grande. The movie tells the story of their unlikely friendship while meeting each other at Shiz University. The first thing I want to talk about is the casting of this film. It is incredible. First off, Cynthia Erivo has the principal character of the Wicked Witch of the West, or how she's known in this movie as Elphaba. She is unbelievable in this movie. First off, all the singing that they did was live, which is incredible given the sheer amount of stunts she has to do, particularly in the closing number of Defying Gravity, which is an incredibly tough vocal song in general for when the actresses are just standing on the stage singing it. Many Wicked actresses have actually blown out their vocal cords when playing Elphaba, so the fact that Cynthia Erivo is flying around and flipping about, doing all her stunts while singing live is just insane. And then we've got Ariana Grande, who I was initially apprehensive about because the only thing I've ever seen her act in is that Nickelodeon show when I was like 12. So I wasn't as confident in her acting ability. Obviously, she's an incredibly talented singer, but I was really surprised by her performance. She is incredibly funny in this, and going back now, looking at some of the SNL clips that have come forward since kind of me being more aware that she does do acting, she is just the perfect fit for this film. And I think what's really shone is the relationship that the two women have together in their performances. It's really something beautiful to watch, and it's carried forward to a lot of their the content that's coming out around their press tour. I know they've clapped a lot of shit for being overly emotional and crying in all their interviews, but I think anybody that says that just really doesn't understand theater kids even remotely, because the fact that they're crying about this production over and over again is like the most quintessential musical theater cast thing ever to do. Like, tell me you haven't been in a production without telling me you haven't been in a production. And I think the connection that the two actresses very clearly developed over the production of the film in their personal lives really is brought through in the screen. You really do feel the love that grows between these characters and their desire to want the other to succeed and to do the right thing and to make the choice that they need to make really shows through. And I think that's a credit to the cast and how much they bonded in real life. Both of the women on separate occasions in the film brought me to tears with the emotional gravity. Particularly, there's a scene when their friendship first forms and they're down at this underground club called the Oz Dust, and it is so deeply moving. But I'll get into more of that later when I start going through the plot of the film. Then we have Jonathan Bailey as Fiyero, who I haven't seen in anything before, but my sister really loves him. So I I did have kind of no expectations going in. And other than the fact that I think he's about 10 years too old to play Fiyero, he's great. He's a phenomenal singer. I loved his performance. I loved his singing. The dance number, Dancing Through Life, is iconic. I think it's now trending all over TikTok. I keep seeing it, although I might be in some sort of theater kid algorithm. But Jonathan Bailey's fantastic. And then, of course, we have Ethan Slater, who's been all over the news with his relationship or affair that developed over the production with Ariana Grande. I really didn't know what to expect, I think, when their relationship first hit the news. And there's lots of clips of him in SpongeBob and a lot of stuff about kind of mocking him and, how short he is and the way he looks and the cringe factor that is SpongeBob the musical. I really didn't know what to expect. I was really surprised. I thought he was great. He was super endearing and super charming. And I think this is his acting with Ariana Grande, I thought was really sweet. And I think that, is the same thing that her acting with Cynthia Erivo as the real life care that is between these people is brought out on screen. Then, of course, we have Michelle Yeoh as Madame Morrible, and she was great. Michelle Yeoh is great in everything. No notes. She's unreal. And then we have, of course, Jeff Goldblum as the wizard himself. Jeff Goldblum could play anything, and I would like it. I think he just plays himself in most roles, other than in this one. He's obviously a little more evil. But yeah, he's fantastic. He's charming. He's funny. He's not the greatest singer in the world, but he definitely carries a tune, and the songs that he's required to sing in are not difficult by any means. Sentimental Man you don't have to have a great deal of range in order to hit all those marks, but he is very charming, and you can very much see how he was able to convince an entire civilization after flying in on a balloon that he should be their leader. I would for sure be like, yes, of course, Jeff Goldblum. And those are sort of the main players in the film. There's a few sort of minor characters that I thought were all fine, but they're not the stars of the show. They're not particularly memorable, and I feel like they could have been slotted in by kind of anybody with like reasonable talent, especially because they're either background characters or chorus singers or things like that. They're not necessarily there's no solos from them. The thing for me that I think really shines about the production of this film is it's very clear that everybody involved in the film loves Wicked and is a fan to their core. And it really shines through all the performances, the direction, through the script. It's very clear. Although this is a blockbuster film that's split into two parts and it's going to obviously make the studio a ton of money, this is a production that was developed out of a love for the source material, both through the original Oz books, the Wicked novel itself, but most importantly, the Wicked the musical, the Broadway production. It is very clear from all aspects of this film that everyone involved believed heavily in its source. I've watched many interviews with Jonathan Chu, who is the director of this film, and it's very clear that every aspect of the movie was so detail-oriented and well thought out, and I respect his decision to eliminate special effects as much as possible in terms of CGI and post-production. And it is very clear in the movie the movie comes off more real because it's all done, for the most part, with practical effects. There's a scene in the beginning with fields and fields of tulips where they really did plant them, and the kids are running through fields of tulips. And I think it grounds such a magical and more out of this world sort of ridiculous place in reality. And I always feel that with practical effects, it gives it more of a realism. And then, of course, the film always ages well because stuff that is real always looks real, where as computer animation and CGI develop, things look really dated quite quickly. If you look at the Harry Potter films, for instance, you can really really tell now, where that was state of the art, quote unquote, at the time. Another very important thing I think about this film is the inclusion that is present in this film. It is a very diverse cast, as well as the character of Nesta Rose, who is a wheelchair user in the play, has always been played by an able-bodied actress, and that this is the first time in which a real-life wheelchair user actress is actually playing the role, both in the younger childhood flashback scenes, and then also in the main part of the film. Marissa Bode is the actress that portrays her. She doesn't have as much of a main part to this film. However, I do believe that she is going to be featured a lot more heavily in the second part of the series. The film does a good job of explaining the different family dynamics that can take place with a family member that has a disability, whether or not it's kind of institutionalized enablism, where people, people around Nesta Rose are kind of babying her or thinking that she's not capable when she very much is. This is an attitude she gets from her father as well. But Alphaba is really wanting to empower her to be independent and to know she's very capable, which I thought was interesting, and it wasn't something that I think about as much in my day-to-day life. So I really applaud this movie for its inclusion and its real portrayal of these characters. Wicked very much gave me a similar feeling to how I felt after seeing Barbie, where it took me a few days to continue to process the film. It also gave me this sense of a universal shared experience in the same way that Barbie did with feminism, in the way that Wicked did with otherism. Growing up as a theater kid, I wasn't particularly cool. I mean, I was kind of a loser for a really long time, and in a lot of ways I still am. I have felt very othered my whole life. I mean, some of that is my own doing, probably, because I am a bit different than I think a lot of the people around me, and not because I'm special or any better or anything. I just have a lot of different interests, and it was really deep, like a deep sense of loneliness and isolation growing up, particularly as a teenager. I felt alone and weird and terrible and awful in my skin. And a character like Alphaba, who is green and has this differentness written all over her face, I just really connected to it, and I thought about it for days afterwards. And I was in the theater watching the film, and I was like, just silent tears streamed for the whole movie, because I felt really seen by it. I felt those feelings that she portrays on the screen, and it was profound for me to see this film. And I know it sounds very stupid and silly because you think about it and you're like, oh, this is the Wicked Witch of the West. It's based on the Oz books, which are fun and silly, and this world of Oz is, it's not a real place. It's magical. There isn't anything other than the emotions of the actors that are grounded in a lot of reality. And so in order for a fantasy film, essentially a fantasy musical at that, to hit that hard, I think just speaks volumes to particularly Cynthia Erivo's talent in storytelling. I've also seen her speak about it in terms of her racial identity, subbing out, being black for being green. And I'm not black. That's not my experience. So I can't speak to it in that way. But I have seen a lot of, black content creators, as well as Cynthia Erivo herself, say that it spoke to them because of the immediate otherness that comes with racial bias. And I thought it was beautiful, so I'm not going to be able to say it in any sort of nuanced way, but please check out Cynthia Erivo speaking about it, because I did find it quite profound, and there's definitely something there that I will never understand, because that's not my lived experience, but the feeling that she portrays is so emotional that it is just like a gut punch. It is raw and hard and beautiful, and I just applaud her for every little bit of her performance on displaying otherness. So shall we get into the plot? It's probably time. I've been kind of rambling. Anyway, so the movie opens up. It's got an overture where the camera angle sort of is flying over Oz, and we see Dorothy and her friends walking along the yellow brick road. And then Wicked is flashed upon the screen. A little Easter egg for Oz fans is both the little glimpse of Dorothy and her friends, as well as Wicked itself, is written in the same font as the 1939 film title card. So that was fun for me. I got quite excited about that. The film opens up in Munchkin Land. All the Munchkins have come out because the Wicked Witch of the West is dead. Glinda the Good flies down on her iconic bubble to confirm the news that the witch is in fact dead. They begin to sing "No One Mourns the Wicked," which Ariana Grande hits operatic notes in it, which is amazing. She was working with a vocal coach, I think I saw in an interview, for over 6 months in order to do that. She had to raise up her entire voice by 1 full octave in order to be able to do that. And she previously was able to hit whistle tones, so that's pretty incredible stuff. I think Ariana Grande is a once-in-a-generation singer. I think the only one that kind of holds any sort of candle to her in the past maybe 30 years of singers would be Mariah Carey, and I know she gets that comparison a lot. Anyway, so No One Mourns the Wicked is this 6 or 7 minute song where they're going through that the Wicked Witch is dead, that no one's going to miss her, no one's going to lay any flowers on her grave. Because of the my previous experience with Wicked and knowing the entire story inside out, this is where Ariana Grande's performance starts to shine, because you can really see in her face, in the way she's portraying it, where she's supposed to be singing this song, No One Mourns the Wicked, in celebration of the Wicked Witch's death, but you can see on her face that that is not the emotion that she's feeling, that there's a lot of complex emotions, that this is the death of her friend, and that is something that she's tried to push down in terms of fitting in with the establishment and not going against the wizard, and wanting to just stay on the path that she was supposed to go on before her eyes were sort of opened by her friend. In her safe world, in her world of privilege. And all of that is written on Ariana Grande's face. And listening to her sing this song, initially, like, I just started crying. I mean, I'm a crybaby, I'm a theater kid, but like in the theater, like I was just, my eyes were tearing. And I've seen the production of Wicked, the stage production, which I love, but this is better. This is so much better. Ariana Grande's performance of Glinda, starting from the second she's on screen, is so nuanced. She's phenomenal. During this scene as well is when they go over Elphaba's childhood. There's the flashback to why she's green. Her mother was having an affair with, spoiler alert, the wizard, and was drinking this potion that ended up turning her skin green. Her father rejects her entirely, and then is so concerned that her younger sister will be green that he forces her mom to eat these flowers that end up causing her a disability. This really shows that Elphaba is completely othered instantly by her family for being green, as well. It shows flashbacks of the kids tormenting her for the way that she looks. One of the Munchkins during the scene asks Glinda if they were friends. And this is where we then jump back in time to the origin of their meeting. Both women are at Shiz University. Elphaba is initially not supposed to go, but she has a reaction to an incident with her sister that causes her to produce some sort of magic, which is then seen by the dean, who is Madame Marble, and she gets a place in the school. Glinda is there. She comes from a very wealthy background. She's very privileged. She comes in riding in on all her suitcases, all 50 of them, and is immediately accepted and loved by the other students. She is instantly popular, very Regina George vibes. And her and Elphaba instantly dislike each other through sort of an accidental acceptance of a task from Madame Marble. Glinda ends up with Elphaba as a roommate. Both of them are deeply unhappy about this. We then transition into a song called The Wizard of an Eye, where Madame Marble pulls Elphaba aside and talks to her about her magic, and that she hasn't seen this kind of talent in a long time, and that if she studies and works very hard, that one day she could meet the wizard. And then we see a bit of a fantasy scene where Elphaba is singing about the things that she might be able to do. And it's very clear that she is going to want the wizard to make her quote unquote normal so that she doesn't have to be green anymore. We transition here into the development of the relationship between Glinda and Elphaba. Glinda is awful to Elphaba and very much continues to make her feel othered. She has these two sort of cronies with her that sort of follow in every footsteps and agree with everything she says. Glinda is very clearly kind of horrible to everyone in her life. She's terrible to the one professor, Dr. Dillamond, who's a talking goat because he can't say her name correctly. He is unable to say the G sound, and so he calls her Glinda, which she refuses to let go. So they develop this sort of contentious relationship. Elphaba has, I think, a feeling that a lot of people have when they are othered initially in school. I know it's something that I've had to like unpack as an adult a lot, is this deep-seated anger for being othered and then feeling like it's fine to then also kind of be an asshole back. It's something we see in Mean Girls with, I can't remember the character's name, but she's the girl with the dark hair, where she is a mean girl too, but because she didn't bite first, she feels quite justified. And I think we do see a little bit of that with Elphaba. We now get into the song What Is This Feeling, where they're describing their hatred for each other, and it is just a fun song. It's great. I like this one just as much as the original Broadway version. Yeah, it was very excellent. There's a kind of iconic choreography where Ariana Grande is walking through the hallway and she's kind of smacking the book, and she's flanked with all the other students who are doing exactly the same thing behind her. It's iconic, a lot of this choreography through the entire film. It is great. And while all this is happening, while they're going through school, there is changes that are apparent in the way that Oz is. There has been a shift in the way that animals are viewed. Animals throughout the history of Oz. We're scholars, we're part of society, and they're starting to be othered. There's a sweeping sense of that throughout the country, sort of a pulse of it. And it's picked up, of course, by Dr. Dillamond, who is the professor of their history class. He's an incredibly smart character. He is very concerned with the changing tides. He has started to feel some of the more animosity from both the students as well as the faculty. And Elphaba sees him walking out one night and she follows him, and he's having a meeting with one of the with a couple of the animals, discussing what is happening. That animals, because they're being treated like animals, are beginning to lose their intelligence, their ability to speak. And Elphaba is horrified as somebody who is othered as well. She is not so subtle with her sneaking around, and she gets caught by Dr. Dillamond, and which he then explains via a song called Something Bad what is going on. Now, It's my least favorite song in the play and in the movie. This is where I decided to take a B break myself. But yeah, so it further explains that. In walking back from where she found Dr. Dillamond, she bumps into a guy on a horse, and he's very openly trying to flirt with her, and she just kind of brushes him off. And this turns out to be the character Fiyero, who in the next day is the new student at Shiz, who Glinda is immediately quite taken by and is on a mission to get his attention, which she does. And because she's beautiful and he's beautiful and he's perfect and she's perfect, so they're perfect together, they begin singing a song called Dancing Through Life, which essentially, I think is if you're going to look at one number from Wicked other than Defying Gravity in terms of the choreography and the talent, look at Dancing Through Life. There's amazing dance sequences through the entire thing. It's incredible. So Fiyero wants to sneak out and have a bit of fun, so he wants to go to a place called the Oz Dust, which is sort of an underground club in Oz. So he invites Glinda and all the other students to go with him. They're going to sneak out. And Bach, who is one of the students, he's the munchkin, he's the one played by Ethan Slater, we've been seeing him sort of peep at Ariana Grande. He's very clearly in love with her through the film. He wants to go with her. I can't even get his name right. I think she calls him Bake. She convinces him that to impress her, he should ask Nessa Rose, the quote unquote tragically beautiful girl in the chair. And he wants to win Glinda's affection, so he asks Nessa. Nessa is, of course, thrilled and accepts his invitation to go to the Oz Dust. She then tells Elphaba about this and that it was Glinda's idea. And Elphaba is concerned because Glinda has been so mean to her. And then Nessa sort of wins her over with her case. She's so happy that a boy has asked her to go. They then go into a scene where Glinda and her friends are getting ready in her room, and she has this hat that they deem horrible and that there's no one she would hate enough to give it to wear it. And then they decide that they're going to give it to Elphaba and invite her to go to the Oz Dust as well. Elphaba accepts the gift, although it's clearly she's still quite apprehensive about it. And everyone goes off to the Oz Dust except for Elphaba, who stays behind because she asks Madame Marble a favor. She asks for Glinda to be included in the lessons that are preparing Elphaba to see the wizard with the magic as a return for what Glinda has done for Nessa. We then flash into the Oz Dust where everybody is there and they're having a great time and they're dancing, and then Elphaba comes in to the Oz Dust with her hat that she's been given from Glinda. And while explaining this, I honestly might cry a bit. The entire crowd is disgusted with how she looks. They're all kind of silent. They stop dancing. They're making fun of her. And it's really horrible. And I think if you've ever experienced any kind of bullying in your life, this is a hard watch. It very much gave me kind of flashbacks to being in grade 2, 3, and 4, where I was deeply made fun of. It's a hard scene to watch. Elphaba sort of stands her ground and she starts dancing by herself, and she's crying as she does. And Glinda makes a sort of snippy comment to Fiyero, and Fiyero kind of looks back at her and he's like, well, I think that's a person who's very brave. People are continuing to make fun of Elphaba and Glinda through, I think, a combination of Fiyero saying that and then her watching Elphaba refusing to buckle to the people that are making fun of her and dancing. She decides that she's going to step forward and dance with her. And there's this beautiful scene with her and Cynthia Erivo, where Alphaba is trying to show her this dance that she's doing. And the scene was like the choreography Ariana Grande didn't know before. So Cynthia Erivo is teaching her in real time during the scene. And it's incredibly moving because with the power that Glinda holds, everyone eventually dances in with her, and Alphaba is no longer othered. And I feel complex about this situation because of, and this, the complexity I think of Glinda's character is where is this coming from? Is this only to impress Fiyero? Is this coming from some sort of sense of guilt because you are seeing the repercussions of your actions? And I think most likely it is a combination of the two things, which I think is, quite grounded in reality for most people. I think most people would just do the easy thing, which is to just go along with the crowd and to others. However, if there is a personal motivation initially, people are able to see the flip side of it. But I found this scene to be profoundly moving, and I did find it, I think, to be the most moving scene in the film, the one that I liked the best. And post this scene, then Glinda is joining in Alphaba on the lessons, as well as Glinda and Alphaba have sort of shared this moment together, and it has bonded them, and they are friends. And Glinda decides that she wants to make Alphaba more confident and to help her with the way she looks to help her feel better. And so she sings the song Popular, which I think is most people's favorite song in the play. It's for sure the most fun song, and Ariana Grande's comedic style is really on display during this. Just the way that her physicality, very Lucille Ball, kind of old school slapstick is great while she's singing and dancing. She is hysterical, and it's a wonderful performance. The next day we get a scene where they're in Dr. Dillamond's class and officers come in and he is forcibly removed from the school. And it is clear that there is going to be a mass silencing of the animals. They then bring in a lion cub and discuss the benefits of caging animals, and the animals are in their proper place. Alphaba has too much and has an explosion of magic, and she causes all of these poppies to float up and put everyone to sleep, which is a nod to the Wizard of Oz when Dorothy falls asleep in the cursed poppy fields. She is immune to it, and then for some reason Fiyero appears to be immune to it, so they take the lion cub out of the cage and they ride into the forest to release the lion. This lion, of course, later will grow up to be the Cowardly Lion. There's another nod to the Wizard of Oz. He is put in a basket on the back of her bicycle, and it looks just like Madame Gulch in the original Oz movie, riding away with Toto. In the next scene, Alphaba then receives notice from the wizard that she is to come to the Emerald City to meet him, and she decides that she's going to discuss with the wizard what's going on at Shiz and with animals in Oz in general, and that she's going to take a stand against this, and that she wants the wizard to help her. We then get a song that Alphaba sings where she is clearly in love with Fiyero, but that she isn't the girl for him, and that he's with Glinda. And then the next day, while she's waiting to go on a train to the Emerald City, we kind of get the understanding that Fiyero feels that way for her as well. And then she last minute invites Glinda to go with her to the Emerald City, and off they go. We then get the shots of the Emerald City. We get the song One Short Day. There is a nice sequence here where they explain the history of Oz and how it came to be. There's also a great cameo by Kristen Chenoweth and Adita Menzel. who were the original Glinda and Elphaba on Broadway, where they sing the history of Oz. It was just really fun and unexpected. I was happy to see them both there. Idina Menzel sings her iconic riff at the end of Defying Gravity included in this song, and that's just a great nod to anybody that is a fan of that original 2003 soundtrack. During the song, we learn all about a book called The Grimoire, which is sort of the magic spell book that the wizard used in order to kind of create the world that they have now for the Ozians. Glinda and Elphaba go through the Emerald City and they get to meet the wizard. He sings the song Sentimental Man, where he explains how he cares about his people. Madame Marble then joins them, and they are encouraging Elphaba to try and read from the Grimoire, which she does, and she's successful because neither of them can translate it. And while she's reading it, the monkeys sprout wings, and she has cursed them without knowing it. And through this, she realizes that the changing attitudes about animals comes from the wizard and Madame Marble, and that they are controlling it, and that they are fake, because the wizard cannot perform any kind of magic whatsoever. Now, of course, we already know this. If you are a fan of the Oz movies, the wizard is nothing but a hack, and then flies away in his balloon. But at this point, the Oz citizens do not know this at all. So Elphaba's horrified. And I think this is where it's interesting to discuss the changing views of animals. I think it is a very direct kind of comparison and link to the way that the Jewish population was treated under German rule in the 1930s and 40s. I think it is a direct correlation of the othering and the slow kind of descent into they're using animals, but it very much feels like anti-Semitism that swept Europe at that time, and the world, actually. But more importantly, the bigger scale of it in Europe, that it is that propaganda and your leaders can turn the way you think. Is also interesting given the U.S. and Canadian political climate at this time. How we're seeing some of that happen now. And I think watching Wicked, that was something that really stuck with me, was here's this wizard that has all this power and has convinced people that he's able to do all these things, very much like a Donald Trump, a Pierre Poilievre. And really, he has some really horrible ideas that he's sort of masking behind this quote-unquote charm. Anyway, so the wizard and Madame Marble realize that Elphaba is not going to side with them. She's not going to use her magic in order to help them in their quest for power and control. And so Elphaba runs, and she's trying to escape. And the wizard announces over the speaker that she's evil and they must get her. And he tells the monkeys that she's the one that's done this to her, when in actuality she had no idea what she was doing, and it was the wizard who did this. So she runs, she grabs Galinda's hand, and they're running and they're trying to hide. And this is where the start of Defying Gravity comes out. And Elphaba is sure in what she's going to do. She's going to go on the run. She's going to do whatever she can for her cause and stand up for what is right. And Glinda isn't. And I think this is, again, where the complexity of Galinda comes in. And I think it's something that we see a lot in society in terms of people who grow up with certain ideals and are very comfortable in the way society is structured, being uncomfortable with any sort of system dismantling. And that's what you see here with Glinda. Glinda's a person that comes from a lot of privilege and has been very much supported and cared for within the system that exists. So it's hard for her to see the system as evil. I think is one of the things that we see when we talk about institutionalized racism in healthcare and politics and any structure system, prison systems that we have, people who are not affected by it, who don't see it, who it isn't an everyday thing, don't want to change the system, and they are refusing to kind of acknowledge that that's what's going on. And it's always the people that benefit from a system that have a hard time with the changing of it because they're scared of what that means for them. And I think Glinda is a good representation of people like that are, the system's fine, this is the way it's been, this kind of thing doesn't exist, where they're just unable to wrap their head around it. And I think, although they're using sort of the allegory of like animals and things like that, but it is, in my opinion, talking about institutionalized racism at some level. And Elphaba is not going to buckle. She's not going to change how she feels. She's not going to accept the wizard and Madame Marble's idea, even though she no longer will have to feel othered. She will be able to have everything she's ever wanted. And she says, no, I'm not going to do it. And we get this absolutely powerful vocal performance from Cynthia Erivo, singing Defying Gravity, where she comes to her decision and she realizes that she's going to lose. I'm sorry, I'm like crying. It's like even thinking about it. She's going to lose everything. She's going to lose the one friend she's ever had, and that her friend isn't going to be there. And that when it came down to it, her friend wasn't strong. And I think that that's complex, even on just a friendship level in and of itself, without adding all the other external pressures, that she's decided that she knows what's right and she's going to do it. And I think she's then cast through all this propaganda that she's wicked, when all she was trying to do was do the right thing. And I think, yeah, it is an amazing scene, and that's the closing of the film, where she's gonna go. I'm sorry, I'm like crying, but it's stunningly beautiful. And Cynthia Erivo, if she doesn't get the Academy Award for Wicked, I do think that it would be an unfair call. I don't think there's any performance, honestly, maybe in a film in the last 10 years that is as powerful as hers. Certainly the best musical performance I think I've ever seen. Without a doubt. I think actually, I can't think of another musical performance that's as good as hers in this. It's deeply moving and powerful. So that's the plot of Wicked. The entire runtime was 2 hours and 45 minutes, which, when you look at it, is long, but it doesn't, like, the movie's paced exceptionally well, so you don't feel the length. I went with my husband the first time, and he is not a musical fan remotely. He also doesn't love a long film. And close to the end of the film, as they're starting Defying Gravity, I kind of whispered to him, oh, this is the last song. And he's like, what? He's like, I don't feel like we've been in there. He said he felt like the pacing felt like more of like an hour and a half long movie. It's just done exceptionally well. The direction's great. Every aspect of this film I loved. I think there's been some talk about the saturation of this film and how it does fall into an unfortunately 2024, or basically 2020's on, color saturation. We really love a pale movie. Jonathan Shu has talked a lot about having to ground the film in reality more. And so he chose to do that with the lighting and the color saturation of the film. I don't love that choice personally, but I think that's pretty minor in terms of film quality, because it still is a beautiful film. Although it's not the entire, like the exact saturation I would have picked for myself, it still is good. I think people are also comparing it a lot to The Wizard of Oz. And I think what people forget about The Wizard of Oz is it is a Technicolor film, and like at the beginning of the Technicolor being like a technology that we even had, which is why they highlight it so much and why the saturation is turned up in that film. And so they're comparing it to that, where now all of our films are in color, and so we're just not used to that like we want to see that bright because that's what we associate with Wizard of Oz. When we have figured out technology a little bit better, we're not trying to show off a color film because all films are in color unless a director deliberately tries to make it black and white like we saw with Tim Burton in Ed Wood. Anyway, I thought the film was great. I have very little notes. I am happy they chose to split it into 2 parts. I think they need 2 parts. I don't feel that this was a cash grab idea. I think that they added so much life to the film and were able to get so much in depth with the storytelling that the play isn't able to do, and that it needed the second part. And I'm very excited. I'm excited to see more of Ethan Slater's character because he eventually becomes the Tin Man. I'm excited to see Fiyero and his transformation to the Scarecrow. I'm excited to see what they do with Nessa Rose's character. Traditionally in the film, she's given these pair of shoes, the ruby slippers, that she's then help her walk, which obviously they won't be doing. So I'm curious to see how they change the storyline to continue to make it more inclusionary and to fit the film. I'm really hoping that they and I'm sure that they did consult the actress herself to see what would be a more appropriate storyline for her and how they're going to handle that. I'm really excited to see Wicked Part 2 when it comes out next November. Thank you to anybody that listened to this whole episode. Remember to follow the show, like the show, 5-star reviews if you can. It really does help. We've got an Instagram page and a TikTok. So if you'd like to follow any of those, that would be great. Thank you so much for joining for my very first full episode.